Batu began to glance at his ropes again, checking knots by feel more out of habit than necessity. The rough hemp slid across his calloused fingers like prayer beads, the ritual calming his mind. Oni rolled the protein bar wrapper into a tight ball and shoved it deep into his pocket, thinking, waste nothing, leave nothing. He had once cataloged Paleolithic sites where scraps of meals had survived 10,000 years. He would not leave his own litter to be found in the same way. The silence down there was like a weight. No drip of water, no insect wings. Just the stale exhale of their own breath fogging into the beams of their lamps. Falling. They rigged their harnesses slowly as Batu scurried up the wall face, rope in tow. He moved like the stone itself was a ladder built for him, each handhold chosen without hesitation. His strength seemed impossible in that space. Marja went next this time, her breath rasping with every upward pull. Her muscles screamed in protest, every inch of rope a fight against her body's refusal. By the time she pulled over the lip, a thin tremor ran through her entire frame. She didn't say it out loud, but her thoughts screamed, I can't keep doing this pace. 3 days to Tashanta if we do get out, and I can barely lift my arms. Oni went last. Halfway up, his foot slipped.
The lattice calls, we feel it shift. The air grows thin, the earth will lift. What once held fast begins to sway. The laws we trust begin to stray.
His foot slipped. The world spun. He dangled by one arm, legs flailing against the wall. The harness creaked. The rope snapped taut with a jolt that rattled his teeth. The sound echoed down into the dark beneath and kept echoing longer than it should have, like the cavern below had no end. Batu's piton held firm. The rope thrummed faintly under his weight, every vibration translating into his shoulder socket like knives. Batu's voice called down, You've got it! Pull in, slow. He did, painfully. Arms screaming, fingers stiffening, his hand slipped, knuckles raking against the wall, scraping skin until he felt the sting of blood. The temptation to let go, to trust the gear, to close his eyes and surrender was a whisper in his mind. But the instinct to cling, to control his own fate, won out. Hand over hand, breath by breath. Don't look down. Don't think about the dark below. Just reach. Until finally a hand gripped his wrist and pulled him up. He collapsed onto the stone floor above, gasping, the air cold against his sweat. His chest heaved, every breath edged with a strange bitter tang that meant his blood pressure was dropping. They lay there, all three of them, silent, shaking. Cruel hope. And then a sound. Wind. Real wind. Thin, high altitude, moaning through the tight rock. They turned. Ahead, not a horizontal break like before, but an upright wound in the mountain, a slit of daylight far above them, angled upward like a throat of a chimney. The passage was brutally narrow, rising almost straight up, a jagged seam squeezed into the rock. Between them and that thin promise of sky stood a wall of stone. Not fallen inward like the last collapse, this one had been crushed upward, compressed by ancient pressure, its layers stacked vertically like shattered pages in a stone book. Is it climbable? Marja asked. Batu studied it. Knife-edged ridges, loose vertical plates, a ledge barely wide enough to place a boot. A crack that wasn't a doorway but a slot. One they'd have to worm up through sideways, ribs scraping, helmets twisting. Maybe Maybe not, he said, devoid of humor. Oni stepped forward, placed his hand on the stone. It shifted. Dust rained down in a choking curtain, stinging his eyes. The shaft above them seemed to inhale their breath and give nothing back. And the wall groaned, a deep vertical shudder, as though the mountain itself objected to being touched. Hope bled out of them. That subtle shift when the mind quietly accepts a future it cannot escape, and the world seems to tilt imperceptibly towards resignation. Marja pressed her forehead to the stone and closed her eyes. Her pulse thudded in her ears. "This is it," she whispered. Her voice cracked, breaking into a sob she forced down. "This is where it ends." Oni's lamp trembled in his hand. He imagined the three of them wedged here, unable to move up or down, trapped in this narrow throat. A vertical sarcophagus. His chest constricted. The air seemed thinner with every breath. Batu slammed his fist into the rock. "No! We keep moving. The mountain does not take us." His words were steel, but his eyes betrayed the same shadow of despair. Minutes passed. Lamps dim lower to save power. The silence was absolute, broken only by the faint scratch of their gloves, dragging across the rock as they searched for holds. Every breath was an effort. Every swallow tasted like chalk. Time stopped having meaning. The vertical darkness was a coffin standing on end. For the first time, Oni let himself imagine never seeing the sky again. Hope's breath. And then, a shift. The draft stirred, faint, steady. Not from the blocked crack, but from somewhere else. Oni lifted his head, his neck stiff with fatigue. He ran a trembling hand along the chamber wall, searching. And there, a fissure, narrow as a shoulder, hidden in shadow. Air whispered from it, cold and clean. "There," he croaked, barely trusting his own voice. Marja scrambled to him, eyes wide. Face streaked with grime, the fissure was impossibly tight, but the air flowing from it was undeniable. Her breath hitched. She laughed once, a broken, desperate laugh. "We're not dead yet." Batu's relief was quieter. He pressed a hand to the fissure and bowed his head. "I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from?" He kept his palm on the cold stone and prayed. "Lord, you know these depths. You know every stone and shadow. Lead us through the way. You cut rivers through rock." The final shaft would be vertical. They reached the final shaft. Clawing, scraping, half delirious. Water was gone. Their lips were cracked. Their voices had eroded into whispers. The blocked wall had hollowed them out. They had tasted defeat, and only this fissure had given them a reason to move again. Batu looked up through the final throat of the shaft, staring upward into blackness. The area above extended upward into a void. Oni could see a faint light in the distance. But it was real light, diffused, and silver, not from their lamps. Batu tested the rock face. "Solid. Lots of footholds. It shouldn't be that difficult." "Speak for yourself, Spider-Man," Marja muttered. Her voice was brittle, but her eyes clung to the faint glow above like a lifeline. "If I fall now, that's it. No second chances, no soft landing." Batu frowned at her. "I do not know Spider-Man. I am Goat-Man. If I was Spider, I would have 8 legs and be at the top already." Marja smiled and placed her head against the wall. "You're weird, Batu. Don't ever change." "We got this," Oni interrupted. His voice was hoarse, cracked. "We have to. We're too close to fail here." The climb was slower than Batu predicted. Marja's boots scraped. Oni's hands cramped. And Batu's breath came heavier than he wanted to admit. The stone cut their palms, tore their knees. They were side by side now, fortunately because flakes of rock tumbled into the abyss below, each one sounding like a bell toll. By the time they all reached the top, their arms felt like lead, and their lungs burned like fire. Resurrection. They emerged at dusk. Batu wriggled through first, grunting, shoulders scraping against stone. Then Marja, choking on a sob as her face broke into open air. Then Oni. They spilled out onto the open earth like three bodies clawing their way free from a grave. Stunned, shaking, half convinced the world above had carried on without them. The crack behind them yawned like a tomb slit in the earth, the kind that swallowed light rather than released it. Cold air struck their skin like blades, sharp enough to hurt, sharp enough to remind them that they were still flesh and not stone, like the mountain that just tried to consume them. For a long moment, they didn't stand. They only knelt, there in the fading light, trembling on raw knees, as if afraid the sky might close again and condemn them back into darkness. Even the wind seemed reluctant to touch them, circling in a hush, as though unsure whether they belonged to the living or had only borrowed a few more minutes from the dead. The light was bruised with colors of evening, shadows pouring down the valley like slow water. Above them, the peaks of the Silagem Mountains loomed, snow-dusted and distant, their ridges cut against the fading sky. The air bit into their cheeks, carried the smell of stone and pine, and the faintest hint of wood smoke from somewhere far below. Below, a narrow alpine valley stretched toward the horizon, and far off, past the black ribbon of a half-frozen river, they saw the outline of an old gravel road. "How did we end on north side?" Batu said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Tashanta, right there," he said, pointing. "No more than 30 miles. No one moved. The wind tugged gently at their clothes, pulling warmth from their skin. Marja found herself glancing back at the narrow crevice they had just crawled from, a hole in the mountainside that already seemed impossibly small to have birthed them into the open world again. Oni took a slow breath, tasting the thin air, and realizing that part of him still expected the walls to close in. Batu's eyes kept scanning the ridges, half out of habit, half out of disbelief that they had truly escaped. "Thank you." The earth beneath them was unchanged, but they were not the same. They had gone somewhere ancient and brought something back.
In violet